Right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As is always going to happen at EventTech Live, a few issues with EventTech. Thank you very much for joining us at the Orange Stage. We've had an amazing day so far, so many great sessions, and I'm sure that this will be another one. Before we get going, just a couple of items of housekeeping. The best way to listen to these sessions is using the headphones on your seat. If we can just ask that when you leave them on your seat, they'll then be cleaned and replaced ahead of the next sessions. So yeah, there is PA, but probably best through the headsets. And the other thing is we will be taking questions, but we will be taking them electronically. So if we can ask that if you do have any questions during the session, you submit them using the Glisser platform. Over my left-hand shoulder at the moment there is a QR code. If you click on that link, you will be able to access information about the session and also to raise some questions. If you're doing that via a URL, it is glsr.live/ETL21. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Josh, who's going to do an amazing session with the talking about engagement strategies and innovation in that space. I've had Josh speak before. It's really, really engaging, so I'm sure it'll add a huge amount of value to you. I know we've got a couple of headphones over here not working, so if we can try and get those sorted, that would be amazing. Josh, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. First of all, great to be here. Hands up if you're excited to be back at an in-person event, first of all. Good, that's all of us. As much as we all love event tech and virtual events and the emergence of hybrid events, I'm sure you can agree it's nice to be back, meeting with all our friends and colleagues from across the industry. So, a bit of background on me. My name's Josh King and I am the Sales and Marketing Director of EMC3. So we're one of the world's leading creative agencies who specialise in the production of virtual, hybrid and in-person events. Now, we've been very lucky over the last 12 to 18 months. We worked with some incredible clients, including LinkedIn, HubSpot and Google, to produce engaging virtual and hybrid experiences. Now, today we're going to be talking about the proven strategies that you can implement to drive engagement. And why are we going to be talking about this? Well, in a recent survey of over 3,000 marketing and events professionals by Marketing, it was deemed that audience engagement is the #1 challenge when it comes to producing virtual events. Now, it's such a core component that we have to focus on as event planners. So today, what I'm going to do initially is give you the framework that we follow when producing virtual hybrid events, which is also reflective of what we follow to in-person, but there's a few additional layers. And then we're going to discuss the actual strategies and practical tactics that you can implement to drive engagement at your events. Now, there's a lot to cover here in 30 minutes, so I'm going to steamroll through quite a lot of this, but if you do have any questions, please ask. Now, the framework that I'm going to share with you today is something that we created 5 years ago when the EMC3 team had delivered an international event for 3,500 attendees. Now, the feedback on site from the CMO was absolutely spectacular. So, as you can imagine, when we went into the debrief, we all had that feeling of elation. We delivered an incredible show. But to our dismay, when the debrief actually came around, yes, the marketing team were overjoyed with the outcome, but there was a little bit of acrimony from some of the team members in sales. Now, what we learned from that is that alignment is the #1 reason that marketing projects and events fail. And ultimately, if teams aren't aligned on what they deem to be a great experience, then you're never going to have an outcome that pleases everyone. So whenever we're setting out to create an awesome event, the first thing that we focus on is the purpose. Or as Simon Sinek would say, the why. Why are we running this event? What are we trying to achieve? Is it to drive sales? Is it to drive brand awareness? Is it to connect with customers? Is it to allow our customers to network and engage with one another? Is it just to have fun? Is it a celebratory event? So first of all, have a clearly defined purpose. Outline some quantitative and qualitative metrics that you can identify, and you can actually measure the success of your event. It's a crucial component. And then agree on those objectives. Don't have 15, 20, 25 different objectives for an event. Compartmentalize your approach and be specific. The next area you focus on is always the positioning. Now, I think when we look at events, how many events do you go to where the session designs are all the same, the speakers are all the same, and even the names? How many times have you been to events called Connect, Transform, Ignite? And we actually called our own event Ignite, so I'm not slating anyone's names if that's one of yours. But create a clearly defined brand for your event. It's absolutely crucial. It's the building blocks. Start to develop an event brand guidelines, and then from that you start building out your content, build out some values, build out a mission and vision for your event specifically. And next, and this is one of the biggest pain points with any type of event planning, is understaffing the event itself. Now, if you understaff your events, you're definitely going to fail. And it was one of the pain points at the start when everyone was planning virtual events. So many amazing people from across the industry lost their jobs, and people were trying to deliver 3-4 day virtual events with a team of 2 or 3 people. You just can't do that, essentially. So do not understaff your events. The next thing, if there's a virtual or hybrid component, or even most in-person events that we tend to work on, there is some kind of platform that you're using. So whether that's an event app or actually a delivery mechanism for the event itself. But focus on making sure that that's built. I think all of us have high standards these days. We have things like Netflix and Amazon Prime readily available at our fingertips. The UI and UX of these platforms is absolutely incredible. So invest the time, work with great designers, graphic designers, motion designers to ensure that your platform is delivered to the best quality. Then the actual promotion itself. Now, we're going to jump into some of the practical promotion techniques, but ensuring that you could run the best event in the world, but people don't hear about it, then no one's going to attend, no one's going to be engaged. So a lot of people that we're dealing with at the moment, they're only giving themselves sort of 3, 4, 5 weeks in the run-up to an event, and it's simply not enough time to drive engagement and to create that sense of FOMO, that real fear of missing out. Then you have the production itself. Now, how many events has everyone attended in this room where essentially the production is just another Zoom call online? And if you're not investing in your production, then ultimately your engagement isn't going to be high. And I will make these slides readily available to anyone that wants to connect. I'm flying through it because there's lots of content to get through. And then finally, the post-event engagement cycle, which is so often ignored. So how can you ensure that there's a continuation of the narrative once your event comes to a close? So you capture so much incredible content during your event. So why not leverage that? Because then ultimately you have another 12 months worth of content, which you can then be repurposing as part of your content marketing strategy. So this was one of my favorite quotes. If you build it, they will come. I don't know if anyone's seen Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner, great film. But ultimately, if you build it, they will come. Now, I don't think that is quite right. If people don't know where your event is, when your event is, or the value proposition of attending your event, when there's so many events that people can go to, virtual, hybrid, and in person, I don't think people will come just because you build it. So now we're going to break it down into the practical components that you can focus on pre-event, during the event, and then post-event to drive engagement. So first of all, have a strategy and a framework in place. So you can do that by using a live Google Doc that all of the event team and the marketing team have access to, or you can use programs such as Asana, but have a clearly mapped out strategy for your pre-event engagement, on-site and post-event engagement. Unless you have those dates, the production of the content necessary to promote your event will never happen. You have to have that element of accountability. Now, the first step that we always focus on is creating a powerful event brand and a powerful event hashtag, a clear identity for your event. Now, the best events that we work on, HubSpot's Inbounds or Drift's Hypergrowth, they ultimately become brands as big as the company themselves. And that's what you want. You want to be seen as a thought leader. You want to focus on solving, not selling. And then ultimately the return on investment goes through the roof. And then that branding should be pertinent and visible throughout your event. So for Hypergrowth here, you see They actually had like live graffiti walls, which was reflective of the content that was being delivered on the main stage. So be creative, push boundaries, don't just be the same as everyone else. Now the next area that you use pre-event is the creation of your registration page. Now this is an opportunity to be really creative and start building a community in the run-up to your event. Don't just create something static. Have videos on there, have testimonials from previous events, have highlights from previous events. Really start selling your event and the value proposition, and then ultimately you'll see it go through the roof. And then a top tip here is definitely follow the ARIA guidelines to ensure that the website is accessible to those that may be visually impaired or have motor issues. It's such a thing. Inclusivity has to be a focus. We have to adopt a nuanced approach as event planners towards inclusivity and accessibility. The next element that you need to focus on to drive great engagement in the run-up to your event is your email cadence. So having that clearly mapped out. If you just send out one email blast, you're not going to get a very good uptake on your event. And again, there's so many things that you can incorporate into these. Speaker teasers, session announcements, things like Dear Boss letters. So all of this great content which you can be putting into it. And here you can see, have a bit of fun with it, and ultimately you'll drive great engagement. The next area is promotional videos. And even if you haven't ran this event and you're launching a brand new event, you can still create great promotional videos. Things like clips of the venue where the event's going to be, speaker teasers. All of these components can go into creating a fantastic promotional video to really sell your event. And if you are investing in great talent, make sure that you're letting people know. So we've been lucky enough to work with Michelle Obama, Trevor Noah, Serena Williams. Let people know that, and it can be such a fantastic hook to drive engagement and driving registrations. So session announcements themselves, you really want to create that sense of FOMO, and also you can start crowdsourcing questions at that point. So start advertising specific sessions, give your speakers assets so they can promote your event as well, leverage their networks, and ultimately you'll drive the greatest engagement possible. Audience created content is always such a huge asset for any event. Pre-event blogs and infographics are an absolute must. So that links in with your email cadence, and that's how you can be sharing them. You can be sharing them on social media. They can be interviews with various speakers, and make them fun, make them engaging. Show your creativity as a brand. Now, I'm sure most people in the room listen to podcasts as well, and some podcasters have incredible networks, and it can be such an amazing tool and way to promote your event. And again, to start that dialogue pre-event, start listening to your audience, understanding what do they want to learn and hear about, what speakers do they want to see, what are the burning questions that they want answered. And you can even run things like focus groups and deliver some market research campaigns pre-event to really listen. And that's ultimately how you'll create the best experiences. Press releases as well, a huge asset pre-event into driving engagement. Places like BizBash, CNIT, Mash Media, Conference News, all of those guys leverage their visibility and if you create a great enough story, sometimes they'll do it for free. If not, you might have to pay for that visibility, but leverage their networks. Now, influencer marketing and micro-influencer marketing, again, two incredible ways to drive engagement and awareness for your events. I'm not sure who here has seen Fire Festival. Yep, so a few of you have seen it. So that is a prime example of how powerful influencer marketing can be. Just make sure you actually deliver the event you're promising, not what they done. Partner promotion and creation of a brand ambassador campaign. So I was actually part of HubSpot's brand ambassador campaign. But if you do have sponsors at your event, again, similar to your speakers, leverage your sponsors' networks. Give them the assets to promote your event, and ultimately it helps to drive engagement. And then look at the engagement that they're getting on their social platforms. And again, craft your content based on the feedback. Listen to social, listen to the feedback on all of the pre-event engagement sources. Pre-event competitions, pretty self-explanatory. win a free ticket or win 10 free tickets for your team by engaging with XYZ. There is lots to cover here, so I'm going to fly through it, but please ask any questions. Paid advertisements and media. There's so many incredible channels that you can invest for paid media, but I would put a caveat there that partner with people that understand how to drive the greatest ROI from paid media and advertisements, because it can be an endless funnel for wasting money, essentially, unless you know what you're doing. So it can be fantastic, places like YouTube, Google Ads, but you have to understand the mechanisms that you're leveraging. And then another great way to drive engagement pre-event is by launching a community. So that can be LinkedIn chat groups. We love Slack channels for our events. I'm not sure how many of you use Slack. If you don't at the moment, definitely should. It's absolutely incredible. And then things like LinkedIn Live promotion. Social media is such a powerful tool, and LinkedIn particularly for B2B, right? So make sure you're utilizing these tools to the best of their capabilities. Now, during your event, there's lots of great ways that you can drive engagement. Gamification, bit of a buzzword at the moment. Lots of people are like, what is it? How do we do it? There's lots of great examples of gamification, and it's about partnering with the right platforms that enable gamification in a simplistic way that doesn't seem forced. Q&A and polls, crucial to ensuring that the audience is engaged, particularly if your speakers aren't, that well versed in dealing with virtual or hybrid audiences. Q&As and polls help to break those boundaries. Networking. Lots of people say they're not that, they don't enjoy virtual networking that much. I would disagree. I think there's some great platforms out there. It's about manufacturing those networking opportunities and making them as valuable as possible. So make sure that as part of your registration process, you're matchmaking people with the same interests, and that way the networking becomes very, very valuable. If it's just randomized networking with people, then ultimately 9 times out of 10 it's not going to be that valuable. But if you can manufacture it in a way where you're meeting with people of interest, then it becomes a great component of any event, whether virtual, hybrid or in person. Interactive entertainment. Now, my friends from Song Division are here today, but they're great, whether it's virtual, hybrid, in person. There's lots of examples of great interactive entertainment. But what it means is it becomes a less static experience. You're involving the audience, whether it's an in-person audience or an online audience. And that way, the whole experience becomes far more immersive and far more engaging. Now, leverage social media. I would say everyone here engaged on some kind of social media platform or active. So it's such an important space. And if you have a great event hashtag, then you can end up with your event trending across social media. And you can run social media competitions, have social media walls, whether that be virtual or in person. And ultimately that is creating that community aspect. You're allowing people to make connections with like-minded folks, and ultimately you're building a community. Now, this is a huge sticking point for mine, but high production quality. Now, unless you're investing in your production, do not expect your audience to be engaged. Now, of course, there's budgetary constraints, but I would recommend doing fewer events a year, but ensuring that they're a high production quality. Multiple camera angles, for me, if you have the budget, is an absolute must. Again, I equate it to, we all have things like Amazon Prime and Netflix readily available at our fingertips. So just looking at a singular camera angle is not, no offense to the show, is if you do have the budget, multiple camera angles is an absolute must. And also things like speaker coaching and speaker training. So this is our team at the Google offices for an event last week. They rated it as one of the best productions they'd had in-house in the last few years, which was fantastic. But we invested in speaker coaching for their execs. And we saw it with virtual, and it's even more difficult with hybrid productions. Speakers aren't necessarily used to addressing an audience at home and an audience in the room. So invest in speaker coaching for those execs or the speakers that you're investing in. And ultimately, it's those incremental changes which can significantly enhance the production value of your event and help to drive greater engagement. Now, post-event, I think I'm quite conscious for time. We have 5 minutes left, so I'll try to fly through this. The follow-up email sequence, so your email cadence post-event, is an absolute must. And segmentation is key. So you can segment as simply as different emails to people who attended and didn't attend, or you can be even more granular. So what types of content did they engage with? And then they have a slightly different email cadence based on where they spent the most time at the event and how far down the funnel they are within their buyer journey. Yes, it does take an investment of time, but ultimately it really helps with that attendee experience. I know I've signed up to a few events I've not even attended, and they've been like, oh, fantastic, thanks for being here. It's like, well, I wasn't there. A little bit, not the best user journey, for instance. Post-event surveys as well, so it comes back to that point I mentioned earlier. Listen to your audience, and then use the data that you capture from those post-event surveys to craft your strategy for future events. Post-event page, so have your poll results on there, any great testimonials from people that were there, video clips, images, a great way to create that sense of FOMO for future events, and then start promoting your future events on that post-event page, and any discounts from partners or yourself, testimonials, which we talked about earlier, post-event blogs, infographics and podcasts, so ensuring that there's a continuation of that narrative after the event comes to a close. Share your event results, again, should be hosted on that post-event page, but can also become part of the post-event email cadence. And then follow-up events. So if you've just done a large conference, why not then break that into smaller community events, localized regional events throughout the year, and then really bring that community together. Share event photos and music playlists. So if you partner with amazing people like Song Division, or you have an event DJ, you have a photo booth, share those fun moments. Particularly if you're a brand that's trying to be seen as fun, or if it's an internal event and you feel like they're memories that people have created. And ultimately, we are memory makers. So share those moments, and then immerse yourself in that data. So not only from the post-event data, but the event data from your event platform, and it could be your virtual platform, your hybrid platform, your event app, and listen and learn. Look at where people spent the most time, and then use that to craft the content of your future events. And then ultimately, always be asking yourself, what is the future? Where can we go next? So I did have to fly through that, but if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, you can scan the QR code, and I'll be happy to share the slides with you or answer any questions you have about any event marketing or virtual hybrid events. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I think we have got a couple of minutes left, and as I mentioned earlier on in the conversation, you can submit questions for Josh now using the Glisser platform, and that's glsr.live/ETL21. There are a few, which is amazing, so we will go through that. If we start with the top one, logical place to start. So how would you recommend boosting engagement for mandatory events? Sometimes people come to this person's events by contract, and they're not allowed to advertise on social media or public spaces due to confidential info.
I'd say internal email campaigns and things like surprise speakers can be great. And if you can incorporate any kinds of entertainment, it does make a huge difference. So we're dealing with an internal event for a legal client. So not typically the most fun area of business. But what we've started to do is add some gamification into the experience, which over the last couple of events has significantly enhanced the experience. And then also play about with the session designs. So lots of events you go to is keynote to breakout to keynote to breakout to breakout to keynote. Mix the session designs up and you will see engagement go through the roof. So there's some very simplistic ways which you can just enhance an event without going too crazy.
Cool. And the next question, what are some of the KPIs that event organisers are looking to achieve from the virtual events in your experience?
Of course. So number of attendees, so number of registrants don't necessarily align with the number of people that actually turn up. The attrition rate as well, so focus on that. It's different for different sectors, we found. NPS score of any event is one of the biggest ones. So those post-event surveys, actually focusing on session feedback. So individual speakers, obviously if one speaker gets amazing feedback, which I hope I do from all of you here for this event, then make sure you're utilizing them at future events and really focusing on the content that resonated the most. So there are some quick ones which are quite obvious, but we get so much rich feedback from particularly virtual and hybrid. So invest the time immersing yourself in that data, and if you don't know how to interpret it, I'm happy to jump on a call and help you sort of understand how to interpret that data to leverage it to its best effect.
Great stuff. And just a final question, really. Your last slide was all about future. Just a question, really, to understand what do you see happening? I think, obviously, COVID has accelerated the move probably into virtual events probably quicker than we could have imagined, but it was coming anyway. What do you see in the next 5 years as kind of being the development from where we are now into conferences, events, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, of course. I think we're actually seeing a bit of the transformation at the moment. So we've gone through such a hard 18 months as an industry. And I think what we're seeing now is digital's definitely here to stay. So lots of brands we work with are just remaining virtual. Some are going hybrid, and some have just gone back to in-person events. And that, it all depends on the return on investment that you're seeing for your brand. So ultimately, I think what we're seeing now is there's more events than ever before because there's all variations, virtual, hybrid, in-person, and I think what we're seeing is really a lack of quality delivery or a lack of expertise. So I think you're going to see more collaboration across the industry, and that's been amazing during the pandemic, as to see, for the most part, more collaboration than ever before and more altruism across the industry and more knowledge sharing. So I hope to continue to see that over the next 5 years. But there has been a mass exodus of incredible talent, you know, great marketers, great people within the hospitality sector. So I think the demand right now actually outweighs the number of great agencies and in-house people that can deliver great events. So I think you're going to see more mergers and acquisitions, and hopefully, if we get things right, we can inspire a younger generation to get involved in our industry again. And that's the responsibility of all of us. But I think the next, particularly 12 to 18 months, is going to be incredible for the events industry.
What a lovely message to end on. That brings us to the end of this slot. So yeah, all that remains is to thank you very much for attending this session. As Josh mentioned, I'm sure you can reach out to him and speak to him direct with any questions that you may have. Yeah, we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you for future sessions over the rest of today and tomorrow. And in the meantime, hope you have a lovely time for the rest of Event Tech Live. Thank you very much.